Let's also make it possible so that when clicking on logo or progress label within the header, we could navigate between pages, just like by clicking on menu items. And to do this, we're also going to modify reactive variable current page, which stores the name of the currently selected page. But now the signal to modify this variable's value should also come from the header component, besides the now component, and particularly from the logo component and the header progress component, because both those elements that we're going to listen for clicks on are contained within those components. So let's get started, and first component we're gonna work on will be the logo. Let's open up this component, let's create new script tag, and in here import constant page timeline. Because we're gonna reference this page name inside of href attribute, so whenever user clicks on the logo, the page hash should be updated. So we need to specify appropriate page name as a hash. In this href attribute, let's use string interpolation and bind value of page timeline constant to this href attribute by using vuebind directive, or its shorthand form, colon. And now we're gonna register click listener on this anchor element. And thanks to default attribute inheritance in Vue, if we register listener directly on the logo component, it will automatically be inherited by root element of the logo component, which in our case means by that anchor tag. So let's use directive to register listener for the click event. And just like in previous lesson, to fire events, we have to use a special function which we will receive by using define emits macro. In this macro we specify event names which can be sent from this component in the form of array. And since by clicking on logo we should be redirected to the page timeline, let's call this event go to timeline. We don't need to send any data associated with this event to parent component. So to fire this event, it's enough to only specify event name in the emit function. And now let's register listener for this event. Inside of app component, to register listener we use add symbol with event name that we wanna listen for. Also note differences in naming. Where we listed events by using define emits macro, we used camel case notation, because there we were inside of JavaScript context. But here we are inside of HTML context. So attributes should be named by using kebab case notation. And all we have to do inside of this listener is to modify value of the reactive current page variable and assign page name. And since in this case we have to open timeline page, we need to assign the name of the timeline page to the current page variable, which we can do by using constant page timeline. And now let's take a look in the browser what happens when we click on the logo. And just like that we see that the first menu item timeline was highlighted, and the page hash now contains the name of the first page. And sure enough, that variable, which stores current page name, also stores value timeline. And now we will do almost the same steps to make progress label clickable as well. First of all, let's copy import of page timeline constant from the logo component and paste it into the header progress component, because we're gonna have to reference another page name inside of href attribute. Let's also use vuebind directive to bind value of constant to this href attribute, but in this case we need page progress constant, because by clicking on this link we should be redirected to the progress page. And let's also modify constant name while importing. We'll be listening for this event from inside of the header component. Let's declare another event in this define emits macro with the name go to progress. And then we register listener for click event on the header progress component. This event directive will be inherited by the root element of the header progress component, which represents that progress label link which we will click on. And when this click is received, we're gonna send another event go to progress to parent component, so that parent component could update reactive variable current page. In the same way, we're gonna register listener for go to progress event and assign appropriate page name to current page variable whenever this event is received. And after all that is done, let's try clicking on progress label. and notice that the page hash was changed, which now has the name of the progress page, and the menu item that says progress was highlighted. And now, besides clicking on menu items, we can also navigate between pages by clicking on logo or progress label within header. And finally, we'll go back to the app component and notice that in this template, there are 3 places where we modify value of current page variable. And this logic can be consolidated within one function, which we're going to create right now. This function will be responsible for modifying the value of current page variable. Let's call it goTo. As the first parameter, we're gonna accept page, which we should open, and this value we're gonna assign to current page variable. But the thing is that current page variable is a reactive variable. It is a special variable created by Vue, which has property value, and the new page name should be assigned directly to this value property. So now we just need to call this function in template. Let's use it for handling events goTo timeline and goTo progress, passing appropriate page constants as parameters. And lastly, let's also use this goTo function for navigate event that we receive from the now component. In this case, page name that we need is stored within event variable. So we're going to pass this variable directly to goTo function. And to make sure that nothing was broken after doing all that refactoring, we're gonna click around a little bit and verify that our navigation functionality works as expected.